Welcome back to This Truckin' Life, where we go deeper into the life of a truck driver, an owner-operator, or a carrier to understand their journey, what motivated them towards their career, and what advice they might have for others in the industry. I'm Ashley, and today Alison and I are joined by Brendan Dawson, former trucker and founder and CEO of Accident Plan. We are excited to have you here today. This Truckin' Life is brought to you by FreightWeb, a company focused on building the best carrier optimization suite software for carriers and owner-operators of any size, to help them run a profitable and efficient business. To learn more, check out our website at myfreightweb.com/carriers. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of This Truckin' Life.
Hi everyone, welcome back to This Truckin' Life. My name is Ashley. Today we actually have Alison. We also have Brendan Dawson today. We are doing something a little bit different. I know that we have been interviewing truck drivers, but we did want to get a different perspective in regards to insurance and safety. So welcome Brendan Dawson. He is the founder and CEO of Accident Plan, which is a crash management platform. So Brendan, go ahead and tell us a little bit about what Accident Plan is and what the application accomplishes.
Well, thank you, Allison, and thank you, Ashley. You know what? You are interviewing a truck driver today. I don't know if you know that. I still have my CDL, although it's really hard not to drive anymore. And one of the reasons that I don't like to drive anymore is it's a very stressful occupation. And the most stressful day in the life of a driver and a trucking company is the day one of their units gets in an accident. And I promise you, it doesn't matter if it's a small fender bender or a serious fatality. It's a very stressful experience. And oftentimes the driver who is involved, because the one thing I know about all drivers, and possibly the only thing that they have in common, is that they're all human. And as human beings, we have a tendency to slip into what we call our fight or flight mode when we are under stress. And when that happens, our cognitive thinking skills kind of go out the window. And so when an accident is also the riskiest day for a motor carrier, because that's the day they can lose everything if they're not careful, and everything from that moment on has to be very carefully managed down the line. So the way it works for people who aren't using Accident Plan is the driver calls up somebody, and depending on the size and sophistication of the motor carrier, they may get a well-seasoned safety professional or risk manager, and they may be talking to the night dispatcher with 2 weeks on the job. And so everything that happens, that driver's got a lot of responsibilities. They need to secure the scene, they need to mind their conduct, and most importantly, for the benefit of the claim, they need to gather a lot of information, because it's in the photographs that they take have a very high value in forensic reconstruction and understanding the cause of the accident. But the information that's on that scene is perishable. It's going to disappear in a short time. So what Accident Plan does is it's at its core, it's an application on the driver's phone, so that when the driver does have an accident, they simply open the application and we give them instructions. We give them relief. We tell them what to do, walk them through the entire process, which helps focus their cognitive abilities, keeps them focused on the job at hand, not talking about fault, not even thinking about fault, but just gathering that critical information that the motor carrier needs to help defend their claim. And then, of course, Accident Plan takes all of that data that's being collected at the scene and shoots it back to the network so that the support team behind that driver can make important decisions about what to do, whether to get a drug test, how they want to advance the claim, whether they need to send an adjuster out, whether they need to contact their legal team. And so it gives them real-time information. It's an effective first notice of loss program for the motor carriers so that they can start working with their insurers and everyone else down the line.
Nice. Okay, so you make it really easy then for drivers to go through the process.
Absolutely. The driver only needs to do 3 things to use Accident Plan. That's scroll, swipe, and tap.
Wow, that makes it really easy. And, honestly, I didn't even know that you had been a driver, and we've been talking for quite some time now.
Yes.
And so I'm sure that has helped you in your ability to create this platform and this software for drivers to use. How long were you a driver for?
I've had my commercial driver's license for more than 25 years now. I want to say it was It was the early 90s when I first picked up a steering wheel.
Wow, I did not know that. What made you want to get into the transportation industry?
Well, the funny thing is, I'm glad you asked that. I kind of told a lie. And so I've been paying for it ever since. I graduated from the University of Denver in 1988 with a bachelor's degree in mass media and theater, and I fancied myself a film director. So I moved out to Hollywood, and I was going to get into the film production business any way I could. And I also had some skills as a carpenter. And I answered an ad in a trade publication for a low-budget studio that needed a carpenter. And I took all my tools down and said, "Hey, I'm your carpenter. I'm here to go to work." And they said, "Well, we just hired the last carpenter we need, but we need a truck driver. Can you drive a truck?"
Oh, shoot.
I said, "Sure, I can drive a truck." So I ran out and studied a little bit, got my CDL and started, and then I stayed that. I did transportation in movies for about 12 years then.
Nice. Well, that's really cool. That's an interesting way to get in. And so what made you get out of the industry and start creating this platform?
Well, that's another good question. So my last job in trucking was with a company called the Mobile TV Group, which is a specialty private carrier doing live sporting events. So we would send tractor trailers, and a lot of people don't know this, but if you're watching a live sporting event on TV, it's actually coming out of a tractor trailer. Oh. And so the tractor trailers move from venue to venue with a complete broadcast facility on board, all the cameras, all the equipment, everything. And so that was my job, was all the logistics, all the safety, all the compliance, all the driver qualifications, everything for a fleet of about 30 vehicles. Oh, wow. And so I needed every technological advantage I could get, and managing even the smallest accidents from a distance. We're doing 4,000 sporting events all over North America, and if I had a driver get in a dust up somewhere in Michigan, it was really hard for me to control that situation.
Right.
And so when I went through risk management review with the insurance carrier, he says, "You're doing a great job. Your loss runs are great, and so what do you need from us? What worries you about your job?" And I said, "I don't know what to do. This keeps me up at night, scares the living daylights out of me. I don't know what to do should a crash happen." And he sent me, his solution was to send me, where is it? A big box of these.
And what are those?
This is called an accident kit, and this has been around for a long time, and it's just a zippered pouch that the driver's supposed to keep in their truck, and it's got inside a disposable paper camera for taking pictures, and then it's got this clipboard with some papers in it and some forms that the driver's supposed to fill out and send back. And I tell you, if I've got a driver that uses this in some other state, it takes me a week and a half to get it back.
Right.
And that camera, it's gonna freeze 100 times and thaw 100 times and go up to 120 degrees. It's no good.
Right.
And when I sent these out to the drivers, I would find them, the zippered pouch was the most valuable piece, and I would find that in their truck all filled with nuts and bolts and light bulbs and stuff. And so it was really pretty useless.
Yeah, wow.
And so I said, there's got to be a better way. And I went looking for an application. I had just gotten my very first iPhone, and I said, well, there's got to be an app for that, right? There's an app for everything. And there wasn't one.
And so you said, ding, I'm going to create one.
Well, actually, it was I started talking to other people about it, and they said, and it was kind of the other way around. The more people I talked to, they all said, you should create one. I said, well, okay, let's do it, but I need money. And so investors came out and they invested in our business, and we've been building it ever since.
That's great. And so how long have you guys been building this application and had your business for?
We've been open for business since the summer of 2016.
Oh, okay, nice. So for 4 years now.
Yep.
Wow, that's awesome.
It took a couple of years before that to get it built and get it tweaked and get it right. And we're always adjusting. And I mean, as you know, in the software business, you never stop developing. So.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Well, that's good. Good. Well, it's good to know that. I'm glad that now we know that you were a truck driver. And so that gives you a whole nother insight to the industry, and really almost like a leg up on any competition that might come out, because you do have that experience and what issues you had when you were a driver.
I used to call that an unfair advantage. And then Steve Bryan from Vigilo, I don't know if you're familiar with him, but I met him one day, and he says, there are no unfair advantages. No. If you've got an advantage, you earned it.
Yep, exactly. I totally agree with that. So let's switch gears a little bit. So let's talk about the transportation industry, the trucking industry, and how the accident process works, and also what issues they experience when going through the whole accident process and the crash process.
Well, to start with, there's in the industry itself, this is one of the main problems with trucking, is it takes a very passive approach to accidents. The trucking industry spends a lot of effort and a lot of money in accident prevention. And the ones who practice it well practice it very, very well. And I applaud our industry for all the efforts they put in accident prevention. But there's very little effort put into accident preparation, even though in the United States, it's going to happen about 280,000 times a year. So in the time we've been talking, there's probably been at least 2 recordable commercial vehicle accidents that have gone down. So everything is reactive after that. Everything is a reactive process. Everybody kind of says, oh no. I'm in an accident.
You almost let it slip.
Oops. Well, at least it's not the BBC, right?
Yeah, correct.
So they say, oh no, I'm in an accident. What do I do? Well, I call somebody. And then the other person says, oh no, well, do this, and do this. And then one person's trying to tell them what to do while they're talking to other people at the scene. And so it's a reactive process all the way down the line. And so the person in the office gets the information that they can get from the driver. Hopefully they've taken some good pictures, maybe not. And then they take what they've got and they sort of hand it off to their insurance advisor, maybe their broker, their risk manager or something like that. And they go, I'm off of that. But guess what? If there's a collision involving a truck and any other moving vehicle, the trucking company should expect to get sued.
Right.
And they don't believe that. We have this myth in our heads that because it's not my fault, I was rear-ended, it's not my fault, how come I'm the one being sued? Well, you're being sued because you're a trucking company. And everybody knows you've got a minimum of $750,000 to work with.
Right.
And so then they wait. They don't take any action after that until they get sued, and then they're trying to gather the rest of the information and put it together. And so if it does go to the legal department, they're always starting off on the back foot, and everybody is backpedaling, trying to get ahead of a claim. And on the other side of that bar, you've got the plaintiff's attorneys like Joe Freed. I don't know if you saw my interview with Joe Freed a couple weeks ago on Mad Dan. But they're very sophisticated and they're very well prepared and they share information. And so they are driving the losses taking place in insurance. And I know we didn't talk about this much yet, but commercial auto insurance is losing 12 cents for every dollar they take in. So that's very much it, a reactive process.
Right.
They're just, trucking, as you know, is just right now coming kicking and screaming out of the Big Chief and Crayola tablet era.
Right. Yeah. Wow. That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I've heard a lot of issues with the whole insurance. And also, wasn't there a change recently in regards to insurance and the minimum that carriers need to have? Or is that something that's still in discussion?
It's still, I haven't heard that it's been voted on, but it's in the House of Representatives. It's in Congress right now, and who knows what they'll be able to do. I don't even know if they can get through the next 2 weeks, but
right. No kidding. So do you know, can you give us a little bit of information in regards to what that means and how that impacts the carriers?
Sure. Every motor carrier out there, every trucking company is currently required to have minimum liability insurance coverage up to $750,000. So if you're an owner operator, you've got your truck, you're out there by yourself, you have to carry $750,000 in insurance and pay the premium on that. This bill, if it passes, will increase that amount to $2 million. So it's a 125% increase in the minimum, which is going to equate to a premium increase of some amount. So for all of these 1, 2, 3, 5 truck companies who are out there just scraping by, trying to deal with volatility in the market, trying to deal with delays, trying to deal with rates that are all over the place.
Right.
They that's not going to change for them whether they're making money or not. So it's going to be a hardship for a lot of those smaller trucking companies. Now, the larger trucking companies may be at 25 assets. At that point, they should already be insured for $2 million. So I don't think it's going to have any effect on the larger companies. But for those with less than $2 million in assets, it's going to be a hurt. It's going to be a hurt for sure.
And why do they want to increase it to $2 million? Is there a reason or something that they're compensating for?
Well, often when a truck crashes, just due to the size and weight, regardless, if you just take the question of fault out of the equation, trucks weigh a lot.
Right.
And they're very large. And when they do crash, they cause a lot of damage. For example, I actually witnessed a crash last year right here in Colorado where a runaway truck coming out of the mountains plowed in to stop traffic. And killed 4 people and caused a huge fire. And it was a low budget operator that we often call a bottom feeder, and they had the minimum liability of $750,000. Well, there's 4 dead, at least 3 seriously injured, and all the property damage, and $750,000 isn't going to cover even a small part of that. So that's the incentive for doing it. Plus, there hasn't been an increase in the minimum requirement for many, many years, and so people just think it's a sign of the times and inflation that it needs to jump up. And maybe they're right, but it's not going to change the fact that it's going to hurt a lot of small operators.
Right. Do you think that kind of increase is going to increase the amount that the carriers charge per lane or per trip?
Well, I hope so. It's got to go somewhere.
Right, and then
it's got to get paid some way or another. Otherwise, capacity is going to be diminished. So if the large segment of the trucking market is made up of small owner operators, if 10 or 20% of those operators disappear, then you're going to find yourself in a capacity crunch. So something's got to give somewhere. Somebody's got to pay. In fact, everybody has to pay, and it's going to come down to it's going to start at the shippers and the brokers and all the way down the line. And at the end of the day, the people are going to pay for it are you and I.
Right, as the consumers.
As the consumer. Everything's going to trickle down to the consumer. Right.
Interesting. Well, let's hope that there's nothing too crazy like that. Because in our economy, I mean, that's going to hit our economy pretty bad. Our economy is already getting hit with the pandemic, and then something like that.
Everything's in shambles these days right now anyway. So I'm not an economist. I can't pretend to understand it, but it's It's at the end of the day, as business operators, we all know it's money in, money out.
Yep.
If
Exactly.
you don't have more coming in that's going out, then you don't stay in business.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. Well, let's talk about the insurance crisis. So what's going on with that?
There's a couple of things at play in there, and I've in this process of building this company, I've learned a whole lot about trucking insurance, and a few things are in play. Number one, more accidents are happening. There's more distracted driving. The cost to repair property, vehicles especially, is increasing, and the distracted driving among all populations on the highway is at an epidemic level. But the real thing that's driving the cost is what we call nuclear verdicts. Nuclear verdicts are classified as verdicts that cost over $10 million.
Okay.
So, for example, there was one that hit Werner Enterprises a couple of years ago in Texas. And the story, if you don't mind, I'll tell a quick.
Yeah, go for it. Tell us.
Story. The driver is going through West Texas in the wintertime. It's snowing. He's on an expedited load. The speed limit's 75. He's going about 45 or 50, doing his job. He's got a trainer in the bunk, or at least a driver in the bunk, and a passenger vehicle on a divided highway going in the opposite direction loses control, spins out across the median, and runs into this truck.
Oh, no.
Driver brings it to a controlled stop. One child is killed. Another child is very seriously injured. The mother is seriously injured. It's a terrible, terrible day on the highway. So they sue Werner for negligence. And Werner says, we did everything right.
Right.
And the plaintiff attorney was able to convince the jury through a practice known as reptile theory that Werner is a big, bad trucking company that deserves to be fined. And they got hit with $90 million verdict.
Wow.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
90, I think it was $89.8 million. Wow. And so the whole industry cries foul because, hey, that driver was just doing their job. Now, Werner made some mistakes along the way, and some of their policy practices that they had in print opened the door for the lawyer to come in and say that. But then there's this other practice called reptile theory. And it's a very well organized practice among plaintiffs' attorneys where they convince a jury, and they call it reptile theory because it's appealing to the reptilian brain of humans. We have fear, and so it preys upon that fear that if you don't sanction this carrier with large damages, then your family could be next. So in the interest of protecting the community, you need to fine these people a lot of money.
Holy cow. I can't even imagine what that did to their operations. I mean, Werner is still around.
Oh, Werner's a huge company. They'll absorb the loss, and they'll make the change. Werner's not going anywhere. They run 20,000 power units all over the country. So,
right.
But I'm sure they're probably self-insured for the first 10 million of that and have reinsurance to cover it. So, and again, those kinds of decisions at the end of the day aren't going to affect Werner. At the end of the day, they're going to affect us. They're going to affect the consumer, and it's going to come in the price we pay for our goods.
Absolutely. It's the domino effect.
Yeah, that's insane. So can you tell us a little bit more about nuclear verdicts? Do you have any more information to share in regards to that?
Yeah, they're well practiced. They're very expensive, and there's been an ATRI report that came out recently. The American Trucking Research Institute did a study on nuclear verdicts and discovered that in the last 6 or 7 years, which also happens to coincide with the slide in insurance, in the insurance losses. They've been increasing in number. And it was through that study that they came to uncover the truth that trucking defense attorneys are not well organized, and they're not sharing that information with each other. And how trucking is always on the defense and always backpedaling the defense. And so that's where these juries are coming from, is just a general, the plaintiff's bar is in general taking advantage of deficiencies in our own defense system. And I mean the trucking defense system. And so that's where we want to be a part of it to help, is to make sure that the trucking companies understand that the defense starts at the loss.
Right.
And that if you don't control that narrative, you're not going to control that claim. So
right. Yeah. And so accident plan would come in, in clutch, I suppose, with this whole process, because you're documenting everything from start to finish, correct?
That's correct. Everything that can be documented, we're training that driver to document. And then the next phase in our development is to put a network of professionals around that system so that everyone can respond right away. So that everyone has the same information at the same time. If there's an injury, that means your legal team is notified. That means your insurance is notified, your broker, your insurance carrier. They can scramble a private investigator, for example, in order to prevent fraudulent claims, which are another huge problem in the industry. A private investigator can then start monitoring the social media profiles of the claimants. So that, for example, and I actually sideline sometimes as a private investigator, but what will often happen is they'll say, well, I can't go skiing, I can't ride my motorcycle, I can't dance anymore. So you go and you catch them skiing and riding their motorcycle, and then their claim kind of evaporates. So that's the method there. So, the drug testing companies, the towing companies, because another huge problem that is really taking a hit on trucking companies is unfair towing practices.
Really? In what sense?
Well, for example, a truck gets in a crash, and then there's just the truck is disabled for whatever reason, and then the law enforcement agency will call a trucking company, and depending on the state and what the laws are, they might have an in with the trucking company, and in that with the towing company, and then the towing company will come out, and if it's a slow day, they'll send 4 or 5 pieces of equipment to a crash that only needs 1 piece.
Right.
And then they'll bill $50,000 for a tow that really should cost closer to $8,000 or $9,000. And then they'll tow that truck to their yard, and they'll impound it with a lien for that $50,000 tow charge. So now the cargo's tied up, the assets tied up, the driver's personal belongings are all tied up. Nobody can get into the truck. You can't get any forensic evidence off it.
Right.
Tied up, and everything's in a halt until somebody settles up that bill. So that's another thing we want to do, is make sure that driver's well trained to document the towing activities so that you can defend against those predatory claims.
Right. Wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I didn't even know that there was this many issues in regards to accidents and crashes. It sounds pretty ridiculous, actually.
It's insane. It's a rough road. That's why I don't like to drive. I was a good driver, but I don't like to do it anymore. It's the stress level is just too high. The more I know, the more I want to stay away from those things.
Right. But I mean, you're creating something that is, looking to impact the trucking industry, really, and making it easier for people who do happen to get into accidents and things, and protecting them, ultimately protecting them from, something really terrible happening.
Yeah, it's from catastrophic losses, and don't get me wrong, I have sympathy for everybody. It's a bad day. When I
Right.
saw that crash happen, it's a bad day for everybody. I watched
Right.
4 people die. It's not good. And
Mm-hmm.
so, but we're playing an emotional game here, and we need to make sure that while yes, the emotions are important and they take place, we have to manage things. We have
Right.
to manage things sensibly and efficiently, and that's where
Right. Yeah. And actually, it's a good thing that you mentioned emotions, because I did want to ask you tips that you have for people to manage their emotions before, during, and after the whole accident process.
breathe. I'm not kidding. Look, it's the single most important thing I learned in college. Don't forget to breathe. What do we do when we get upset?
Right.
And then we get no oxygen to our brain.
Mm-hmm.
Breathe
Right.
deeply, breathe deliberately, breathe intentionally. Deep breaths, get oxygen in, let it out, and that re-engages your cognitive thinking, calms your emotions down.
Right.
It seems ridiculous, but we all do it.
Right.
I'm trained that way, and I still do it. So
Right.
really,
Exactly. Yeah.
it's breathing and focus on the task.
Right. Yeah.
Focus on
So
the task and what has to happen next.
what are the steps in the accident process? I don't know if that makes
Oh,
sense.
yeah.
Okay.
That makes sense, and we've got them all mapped out. The first step is secure the scene. Well, actually, no, I'm sorry. The first step is a primary assessment, and that's what we do with accident plan. We're asking that driver a series of questions. Are you involved in an accident? Yes. Are you injured? No, because as a safety person, that's the first thing I need to know. What kind of shape is my driver in?
Right.
Are you okay? Are you injured? No. Is anybody else injured? And if they say yes, somebody else is injured, then we're all the way up into the high severity level, the medium, at least in severity level 3. So that's the primary assessment. Then once the primary assessment is done, we go through securing the scene, which is a 4-step process, making sure the driver's triangles are out so that they're warning traffic. Making sure, that the flashers are on, that the parking brake is set, and most importantly, that the engine is turned off.
Mm-hmm.
And then once we're done with that, there's a conduct reminder that says, hey, don't move the injured unless they're in imminent danger. Don't assist those to the best of your ability. Cooperate with authorities, but stick to the facts. Do not give opinions. And the subtext behind that is do not ever admit fault. Never admit fault. Never say you're sorry. Those kinds of things. Making sure that they're wearing their personal protective equipment, their reflective vest, watching out for traffic. And then once we're done with that, it's gathering the information. We have that driver take pictures of the whole thing. We make them take wide shots of the scene. We make them follow the vehicle's paths of travel so that we can get pictures of skid marks, debris, damaged property, the final resting position of the vehicles whenever possible, because that's the stuff that's going to disappear.
Right.
And so once we've got that, the worst part is over. Now it's a matter of taking a picture of the other driver's license, making sure you get a picture of their insurance card, their license plate, their VIN number, making sure you're tracking down any witnesses, finding out if they're cooperative, getting their information. And we just have them take a picture. Hey, can I take a picture of your driver's plate? Click. And then here's your insurance card, click. And then you go to law enforcement. Hey, can I have your business card? Click. Can you tell me how to get the police report? Click. And then that's done. And once all that information is gathered, we ask them a couple of questions that are related to drug testing, and then you're done.
Yeah. Absolutely brilliant idea, because way back in the day, I was a reckless driver and I got into a couple car accidents. And when you get on the scene, it's really easy to get wound up in the emotions because it's very overwhelming. And so it's really cool that you're taking them through a step-by-step process to protect them and also to protect the whole situation. So what do you think the future looks like for your company? Because I've heard there's some self-driving trucks in the works and everything. How do you think that's going to be impacting the whole industry?
Well, are you asking about how I see the company or how I see the development of self-driving trucks?
Both.
Well, for our company, we are working towards embedding our product within some of the other technology companies. Because one thing we've discovered, and perhaps you've discovered it too, is that people are experiencing app fatigue.
Mm-hmm.
We've got too many interfaces, too many user IDs, too many logins, and so where we want to be and where we see technology going in trucking is via automated programming interface to have all of the systems that any single company needs, because one size doesn't fit all.
Right.
So we want to have your dispatch and logistics software and our accident plan and your ELDs and your bill of ladings and everything all in a single sign-on, single interface, single package, so that the user only has to do one. The driver only has one login, and it gives them all of the tools they need. The administrator, one login, multiple tabs for each one. And then, once we get that done, when you deploy Accident Plan, it will send a webhook and it will trigger the rest of these systems to gather up a crash file, because now you have to have that crash file. It's a federal requirement to have that crash file. So with all of these systems integrated, it'll go out and it'll grab the bill of ladings, it'll grab the fuel receipts, it'll grab the driver's logs, it'll grab the maintenance files, it'll grab the DVIRs and put them all in one file so that, bing, here's your crash file, you're ready to go.
Right.
That's where I see us going.
Cool.
Couple of years. Still want me to go on autonomous trucks?
Yeah, let's talk about that, because actually I've had conversations with some of my coworkers about the autonomous trucks and how that's actually going to affect the transportation industry. So I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on it.
Because those are supposed to be starting to come out in like 2021, correct? Or in like the next like couple of years?
They're out. I mean, they're out now in beta testing.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I think that, however, I think the adoption is going to take longer than most people believe.
Absolutely.
And the reason is there's an emotional barrier.
Mm-hmm.
No human being or anybody who's seen 2001: A Space Odyssey doesn't want to trust their life to a machine, because we think the machines are more fallible than humans. So that's going to take some time. You're going to have to have a social understanding about that. And I think that just as with any technological development, there's going to be early adopters, and the early adopters are going to be the large carriers with line hauls, the FedExes, the UPSs that are running duals from one end to the other, and you're going to see one operator running not one truck, but you're going to see one operator running a platoon of trucks, especially on lanes where they're doing the same lane each and every time. And then you'll see that adoption start to trickle down. It's not going to replace drivers, because let's face it, anybody who's worried about truck driving jobs isn't clear on the concept, because we're replacing people that we can't get to fill the seats anyway.
Right.
So I think they're going to be there. I just think it's going to take a lot longer. And I think that trucking is going to let the personal lines automotive take control first. They want to see how the Teslas are doing, how the Mercedes are doing, how the Volvos are doing, and then they'll adapt that technology. Yes, the tech, and so the big question on adoption of autonomous vehicles is, well, how often do they crash?
Right.
Which is really kind of a false question. A better presentation of the question to me is, how often do they crash compared to strictly human operated vehicles? And by the million measured in vehicle miles traveled. And they're already at a state where they're probably statistically safer than human operated vehicles, because let's face it, the machines don't drink, they don't do drugs, they don't fight with their spouses, they don't get depressed, they don't have PTSD. all of those human
drive.
factors that all of those things. So so they're coming. It's inevitable. Because every industry we have, it's a fundamental evolution of technology, stemming all the way back to the lever and the wheel and the screw.
Right.
And so it's human nature to develop technology.
Right. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I definitely agree. I mean, it is going to take a long time for the transportation industry to adopt those, because I mean, we've seen through the years, I've been in transportation for almost 10 years now, and the adoption for technology is so slow that I think that it is going to take, right?
Ashley, they're talking today about developing electronic bill of lading. Electronic bill of lading. Why is that a new thing?
Right.
Why are we even thinking about paper bills? Why are we still using paper bills of lading?
Don't even get me started. Even get me started.
Paper kindling. It's fire starter.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So yes, it will take a long time for these things to be accepted and be adopted into the transportation industry, because transportation notoriously takes forever to adopt
change.
Yes. But I think we're going to be turning a new stone here soon in the next few years. So I think it'll be okay. But yes.
How do you think this is going to impact the consumer? Like
the autonomous trucking?
Yeah.
I think it'll be a very incremental impact to the consumer, if at all, because the business models are already there, and so I think it's going to be a tremendous savings in the long run, because the technology is going to be more expensive. It's going to follow a very expensive curve, and just like all technology, that curve's going to drop off over time. So the early adopters are going to be paying the price for that, but what they're paying higher for in equipment, they are making up in a level of efficiency.
Right.
Now, whether that trickles down to the consumer or not, I'm not holding my breath on that, Allison.
Right. Yeah.
I think the consumer is a passive player in this game.
So what advice would you give to drivers who are, getting on the road? What steps do you think they should take to prepare for, not getting into an accident, to be safe drivers?
Take your job seriously. I see a lot of I look at a lot of social media from drivers, and take it seriously and understand what it means to be a professional. You are out there, and the risks are very high. Do not underestimate those risks. When you're behind that wheel, pay attention to what you're doing and care about your work. If you don't care about your work, you could always go into security guard or being a baker or something else.
Right.
But be mindful out there, because the person in that other lane is somebody's mother, somebody's brother, somebody's sister, and so take it very seriously. And if you don't understand, call somebody, call me, call anybody if there's something that you don't understand that you need to do. And don't take it for granted. Don't ever take it for granted.
Right.
The guy that crashed, the runaway driver who crashed in, he was 24 years old, 25 years old.
No.
His life is ruined. He's up on criminal charges right now because he didn't know what he was doing.
Right.
And so it's a sad day for him, and a sad change in his life. So don't be that guy.
Right.
Pay attention to what you're doing.
And I think it's important for people too to understand, not just drivers, but people in general. If you have questions, it's important to seek out people who can give you that mentorship and provide some sort of insight for you to be successful at your job, and not be scared, not be too proud, because in the trucking industry, there's so much that can go wrong. If you're not prepared, or if you don't ask the right questions, then it's possible that it could happen to you.
Yeah, absolutely. A long time ago, I bought my first motorcycle when I was living in California. And the guy who sold it to me gave me the best defensive driving advice that I've ever had, and I still use today. And that is, presume that you are invisible. Just assume that nobody else can see you, and that you have to navigate through that field of traffic as if you were invisible, which means you have to be defensive at all times.
Right. Yeah, and especially being a trucker, there are so many people who are speeding down the highway, cutting you off, things like that, and being defensive is important ultimately.
They don't like you. You're in their way. You're not going as fast as they want to. They'll pull into your lane and they'll hit your brakes, and they will not give you enough stopping distance. You must think ahead. You have to think way far ahead of everybody else on the road.
Yeah, I agree. I always think about that when, we're going on trips and things, making sure that we're mindful of those drivers, because they do have these 1,000-pound, weighted trucks. And if something happens, they're going to just pound into you. Yeah.
That's 40 tons. That's
right.
40 tons coming at you. And that's something that I would like to like to bring out to the motoring public. And you know what? I want to call out our trade associations here, ATA, state trucking associations. Where are the media campaigns that educate the motoring people about trucks? Number one, how important they are to your lives.
Yep.
Because if you're touching it, it came on a truck. And number two, how to share the highway with these vehicles. Because they're not easy to drive. I promise you, they are not easy to drive.
Right.
And so that's what I want to see our trade associations doing a better job of.
Right, yeah, because I don't even think that when you go through your driver's education programs, there's hardly any questions, if any at all, in regards to trucks. Yeah, I mean, how do you...
Questions about bikers, but not truckers.
Right. Yeah, that would be good to bring in.
When you're driving your car, you can kill a cyclist. You get in a tangle with a truck. It's not a good day for you.
Nope, it is not. It's
not a good day for anybody.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Brendan. I don't have any other questions. This has been a lot of fun and really informative, because I'm learning a whole lot of things that I did not know. We thank you so much for being on this Truckin' Life. And honestly, I would love to bring you back so we can talk about your actual trucking life and how that was and what that was like for you over 25 years, because I think that you would have some really good stories to share with us. So thank you again for being on with us. We will be doing a roundtable discussion with Brendan in the next month or so in regards to accidents and crashes and insurance and technology and how that affects the industry. And we would love to have you join us with that. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time on This Truckin' Life. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Allison. I appreciate the opportunity, and I had a blast today as well.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye, everybody. Have a good one.
Take care.